Today, I'm putting myself to the test as I go head to head with a couple other content creators, amazing people where we've all read the same book, and we're going to share what we think of Dark Bloom by Molly McCobb. Which one of us will you agree with? Maybe all of us, maybe none of us. Let's find out. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, horror, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, just Jim, the father of this show, here with you, except I have guests. Zach is off somewhere else doing whatever he does. He has more of a life than I do. But I've got a couple other great content creators to bring on and talk about a fantastic book with you today. If you enjoy this, be sure to give it a like and subscribe to our channel. But also, I'm going to have show notes that show you how you can find the channels of these other two fine gentlemen. Be sure to check out their things too. So let's get to bringing some of these people on. First up, we've got Derek. Derek, you've been here before multiple times now. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back. It's always fun to talk to you. I always enjoy it.
And we always enjoy having you here for sure. And it's a great day to have you here instead of you being outside. I understand it's freaking freezing where you are.
It is. It's very cold. Between negative 20 and negative 30 below. Tomorrow's going to be the same. And unfortunately, most of my job requires me to be outside. So I'm going to be cold tomorrow.
Nasty. For the record, we're Americans. That's Fahrenheit. Okay. It's not that cold Celsius. I don't know what it is in Celsius. I can never translate.
I think somewhere around there it starts to even out, but it's cold.
Yeah, it evens out to being just cold.
Yeah.
Now, Derek, you've got your own channel and stuff. Why don't you tell everybody about what you do with your friend Justin?
Sure. Yeah. Again, Derek, I'm one half of the podcast that I do with my best friend Justin. We are called D&J's Epic Quest. We are conquering our way through Malazan one chapter at a time. About an hour ago, just finished up chapter 6 of House of Chains, and we'll be moving on into reading chapter 7 here. Justin's probably reading it right now, actually.
Getting the jump on you.
Getting the jump on me. Usually it's me reading first, but this time he's going to get there. So we've read Gardens of the Moon, Dead House Gates, Memories of Ice, and we did Blood Follows, the novella, and now we're into House of Chains.
Such good stuff, man.
I also do other stuff like this. You know, I want to read other indie books. I've read a few, talked to some other authors and that type of thing too. So there's a few of those interviews on our channel as well.
Fantastic. So you're on YouTube, D&J's Epic Quest. Where else can they find you? You're not just on YouTube, are you?
Nope. Apple, Spotify. I think just about anywhere you can find a podcast, we're probably there. Justin deals with that. So Apple and Spotify, YouTube are the big ones.
All right. So I'll drop a few links down in the show notes, make it easy for you to find their show. It's great. Most of those episodes are only relevant if you're going to read Malazan, but you should read Malazan. And then they're a fantastic companion with what you're going through. All right. Our second guest, I'm very excited about because I've been enjoying his channel for a while, but this is our first chance to actually collaborate. So let's bring Matt on the screen. Hey. Matt of Go Read Books. How are you doing today, sir?
I am doing good, Jim. It's good to be here.
Fantastic. Why don't you introduce yourself to our fans? Because some of them, this may be the first time they've heard about you. Tell them who you are and what you do on your channel.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm Matt. I have a channel, Go Read Books, and that's pretty much any of the platforms you find is going to be Go Read Books is what I try to go by. I just read books, talk about books. Sometimes it's a review. Sometimes it's just saying, hey, this book is great and I really enjoyed it. You want to read it too. So that's pretty much how my channel goes. And of course, I did read the first 3 books of Malazan last year and plan to continue it this year. So excited about it. I did need after reading the 3rd book, not Dead House Gates, but
Memories of Ice.
Memories of Ice. I enjoyed it. But I did find myself needing a break, a small break until I go to the 4th one, but not because I wasn't enjoying it, just because.
I have a very popular short out on YouTube that talks about the necessity of the Malazan pause. It's real. It's real. This stuff is heady and heavy. And you take a break. You go read something else for a while. You still end up thinking about Malazan in the background, even when you're reading something else. But yeah, a pause is just necessary. It took me a year and a half to get through the 10 books of Malazan Book of the Fallen. because I couldn't read them straight through. I
Right.
had to break it up with other things.
I know this isn't about Malazan, but that's what I did. I read the first 2 books back to back, read another book, and then read the third book, all in
Yep.
about a month and a half. And so
Oh boy.
it was, yeah,
Wow. Did you have
enjoyable.
stuff leaking out of your ears at that point?
That's right.
And then Derek, you and Justin are just living in this stuff all the time, but your pace is very moderate, a chapter at a time. But
Yeah,
you
yeah.
found you have to get into other content too.
Yes. I mean, I don't think I could just only read Malazan. I gotta have something else interspersed in there. Also, we're first time readers of Malazan as well, so we don't know what's gonna happen. I read my chapter, I'll do my summarizing for it, and then I've got some time till we can record, and I'm reading another book, and sometimes reading 2 other books. It just kind of depends on what's going on.
Perfect. So Matt, your channel first caught my eye because of how you spell go. Because I spent my first 5 years of my career as a teacher in a Lutheran school down in New Orleans. So I recognize the kind of spelling you have for go. So those of you who just heard go read books, don't look for G-O. It's not there. You got to look
Go
for the
Tigers.
more
Go
Southern
read books.
Cajun style of writing there. But I love
G-E-A-U-X, that's right.
Yep. So again, there'll be links to Matt's channel. Do check it out. Good content. A lot of the same kind of books that Zach and I are working through. You'll also see there, but it's great to have multiple perspectives on things. So check him out. I've been enjoying it. I am sure you will too. All right, gentlemen, we are here today to talk about a book we all recently finished, a debut book of an author. So we're talking about Dark Bloom by Molly McCobb. Publication date just August 1st, 2024. So it's not been out very long. The genre, post-apocalyptic horror. There, he's got it right there on the screen. Wonderful. And that is a beautiful cover. Is that
It
not?
is. It is a beautiful cover.
Loved it. Whoever designed that for her, fantastic job. Now, why did we read this book? I'm going to go first here. I'll admit I first heard about this book from Twitter. I still don't like calling it X. Twitter. And I saw it featured on various social media posts, and I was like, whoa, what's that? Oh, I like that cover. Let me look into this a little bit. I kind of like stuff like this. But then when I looked into it a little, I thought, I don't know. It might be a little too touchy-feely for my preference. But then I was able to snag an audiobook version, which sort of came at just the perfect time as I was in between books. And I was like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's do it. And I am so glad I did, because this was freaking perfect for me. A great sort of zombie apocalypse style tale with depth. I mean, I plowed through it really fast and I couldn't stop enjoying it. I mean, it was just great from start to finish, and impressive that it's a debut novel. Derek, how about your story? How did you, why did you read it? How did you come to it?
I think I saw that Molly had talked to Beard of Darkness, and I saw the cover and was grabbed by it as well. And I saw that she had some signed copies available to buy from her, and so I bought one from her, and probably not real long after it came out. And I just finished up the last book that I was reading, and I was secretly hoping, Jim, that you would want to read this so that we could do something like this. So once you were committed to it, and then I was like, all right, well, I'm going to have to shake up my TBR list here to do this. So I figured I may as well. I'm going to read it eventually anyways. And I was glad I read it too. It worked out to be a good time. Also, I'm pretty sure the first zombie apocalypse type book that I've ever read.
The first. Well, you've entered with a good one. That's for sure. This is part of the world I enjoy. I love these styles of books. There's a lot of episodes. It's a whole playlist of ones on this on my channel. But this is one of the better ones for sure, because there's a lot of trashy ones. This one is not trashy in any way. At least my opinion. We'll see as we work through this review. Matt, tell us your story of coming to this book.
Well, my story was very similar to what you said. I saw it on X, but I saw it on X, and Molly in particular, different comments, and we became followers or friends, whatever we call it. And then, of course, I kept seeing this pop up, and as you would scroll, you would see this, and I thought, that is a very striking book. And so I don't remember if she was offering it to reviewers or if it was a giveaway. I can't remember at this point what it was, but she was giving away some audiobooks. I think that's, and so I commented or did whatever, and she sent me one, And I bought the e-version as well, the Kindle
Mhm,
version as well.
mhm.
I meant to read this back in October during spooky season, and I just didn't get around to it. And then this beginning of the month, I picked it up. I said, you know what, I'm going to read this, and I did, and just I flew through it. It was a quick read. Now I hate to say easy read because there's a lot about this I will talk about that probably wasn't very easy, but it was a very quick read. I've listened and read through it. And after I got through with it, I said, I have to get one of these copies to put on my shelf. So that's how I came to it. And like you, Derek, this is my first zombie book.
Oh,
In
nice.
fact, I have a interesting history with zombie stories in itself. I've watched some zombie movies more recently than earlier in life because if there's anything that scared me, if there was anything that freaked me out, it was zombies. I can't stand zombies. I have always just been repulsed by zombies. In fact, Dawn of the Dead was one of the first movies that I watched a few minutes of, and I turned it off and I said, "This ain't for me." And that was years ago, probably when I was a teenager. And then I opened how I opened up to it was I started watching The Walking Dead, and
Great
then for
show.
The Walking Dead, I watched a few other movies. World War Z was one of them, and a few others. And I said, you know what? I think I'm okay with this. And when I saw this, I said, well, I want to check this out because I've heard you talk about Jim talk about zombie stories.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned World War Z, the movie, but the book is one of the best zombie
That's what I've heard.
apocalypse reads. I know people who hate zombie genre, but love that book because of the way it's written, the quality of the writing, the way the story is told. So strong recommend for that one. And I know Molly just recently read it and she really enjoyed that book. So that's something to say. Now, we ended up all three together to talk about this because, Derek was going to read this. So I got into reading it as well. Hey, let's do this together. And then I saw you, Matt, had just read it too. And I'm like, oh, hold on. Let's do this together. Yeah. So thank you for both you being willing to coordinate like that. And we can come together. And then we hope to do this again with Molly in the near future and actually hear from her. How did she do this? What was it like to come up with this story? And I think that'll be a fascinating conversation. I know she's willing. We'll just have to coordinate those schedules again. So let's move into the review here. And I'm going to start off we're going to talk about different facets of the book. And for those of you watching, each of us is going to take the lead on a different section of this, but we'll all add our thoughts. I'm going to lead off on the setting of the story. And the setting is pretty much the world just like we are in it, present time. But we come into this story where a disease has transformed the majority of the population of the world into some sort of man-eating, horrific creatures that have a weird giggle. They give off strong zombie vibes, though the word zombie is not anywhere in this book that I saw. But that's the essence of what you're getting. And we come into the story in a time a ways after the world fell apart, with just a few survivors trying to get along day by day. And that's the setting of the story. That's where we're at. Would you two add anything else specific to the setting?
No, that's about it. How I would describe the setting. Just a few people trying to figure out how to live just months after whatever it is happened there. They still don't even really know what's happened. And yet you mentioned the giggling zombies. That kind of gave a unique twist from the little bit I've been involved in in zombie stories myself.
And I've read a ton of zombie stuff, and yeah, still a little unique twist. And Derek, anything to add?
To me, it appeared to take place somewhere near the East Coast.
Okay.
That would be the only other thing I would add.
Perfect. Thank you.
And actually, Georgia? Did they not say Georgia? I don't know why.
Was
I had
it Georgia
in my mind? Maybe not. That's just what I had it in Georgia in my mind. That may be because of The Walking Dead.
It could have been. It could have been.
I thought it was Virginia because I know that's where Molly lives. I thought it was kind of that-ish area somewhere.
I'm going to officially say we're going to lean into Derek for the nuanced details because you finished it most recently. It should be fresher in your mind than the rest of us.
I hope so. I hope it's still fresh. That's why I'm glad it worked out we could do this today. So I didn't have to sit on all this stuff.
So nickname is now Fact Check Derek. There we go.
So
setting is one of the ones where we'll then give a rating out of a 5-point scale. What do each of us think of it? And for me, I give the setting aspect a 5 out of 5 stars because I was super impressed by how quickly and clearly the author gets us into the feel of the world. Doesn't really bother to give us a whole bunch of handheld details, just drops us in. It's gritty, it's raw, it's horrific, and that's all we really need to know. So I loved it. I thought it supported the narrative very well. Derek, what would you rate it?
I would say 5 as well. I liked a lot of the descriptions, like just the carnage on the streets and stuff that we would see. It was dark, it was brutal, and maybe it's kind of weird to say that I liked it, but I enjoyed reading it.
There are some times you're like, "Ooh, yeah, should I have myself checked out that I like this kind of stuff?" Yeah, no, we get what you're saying. Matt, what about you?
I agree with what y'all said. I have no issues with the setting. In fact, this is no spoiler. Just in the talking about the setting, there was one scene where a character was looking at kind of a yard and a house, a yard in front of a house, and maybe what she saw was corpses, but she was describing thinking of the family playing and having a good time out in the front yard, and now what they are is just, they're just dead now. And something that I loved about this with my rating, the reason I would give it such a high rating is I'm a very imaginative reader. I'm a very visual. I can see it playing out, and this was very easy to play out like a movie in my mind while I read it. It was really seamless.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Thanks. Derek, as we said, you're the one who's read it most recently, so it's most appropriate you be the one to give us a spoiler-light summary of the book. So we're gonna turn that over to you. And viewers, again, note spoiler light. So he's not gonna ruin it for you, but he's gonna give you the gist. Take it away, Derek.
Yeah, I'll try to be, I guess, as brief and somewhat thorough as I can be. I didn't jot anything down for this, but we're introduced to this female character on the run and ends up meeting, a man that essentially helps her in one sense. I don't want to go into too much detail there. I think they end up becoming partners more or less through this journey, trying to, I felt like, find somewhere to survive just to get by. A lot of this, is just survive, don't die, survive.
Mm-hmm.
And, we run into some different people, almost kind of like side adventures, that they go on a little bit here until that, we get led to the end of the book with, the confrontation there. I'm not sure if that's really kind of what you're looking for as far as a summary, but I don't want to say a lot. I mean, Matt, like you said, this was a pretty quick book to read, not because it was easy to read, but just it was hard to put down. And I wanted to keep reading, and it flowed very well. I thought you get backstory on both the characters, and I liked how that was set up. For a lot of it, you would have a chapter in the present, and then you would get like a flashback to one of the characters, what they have endured, what they have gone through that led them to this point in their life now. And that was probably one of my favorite aspects of the book.
Absolutely. Yeah, Kate and Nick, their story here. And Matt, what would you add to the summary? Anything key? I mean, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good. You're just following Kate and Nick as they try to survive, and they run into sometimes obstacles, trying to figure out if they can trust people along the way. And that was a big issue in this story, is trusting people. Maybe sometimes they can, and maybe sometimes they can't. But they just try to do it together. But there's more to that than what I'm just letting on. Pretty basic summary.
There it is. And I wouldn't add anything else other than just the highlight. You mentioned the backstories, the flashbacks, and those are key to the story that's told, because it really informs why Kate acts as she does, why Nick acts as he does. And we get the meat of that through the backstory, which was really well done, I thought. Yeah. So we won't rate the summary. Basically, you get the rating of our summary when we give you our overall rating of what we thought of the story, which we'll get to at the end of the review. But let's talk about the depth of the plot, how well it's designed, how complex it is. And Matt, you're going to take the lead on that. What do you think?
Yes, sir. So I would say, and having not read a lot of zombie stories, maybe there's a certain way it's done, but having watched a few zombie shows and movies now, I would say that on the surface, it's a pretty basic horror zombie story, in that you get the zombie apocalypse, you follow a few characters trying to survive, there's connections made, enemies made, things like that. So on the surface, it's pretty basic, but underneath the surface, which I think is where you really want to go with this book. This is a story of struggle and survival. It's a story of risk and romance. And with that, if there's anything I usually do not want to read and stay away from, it's romance.
This is why I knew I was going to like you, Matt. We're on the same page there.
I don't want to read romance. Even my favorite genre in fantasy, now we have romantasy, and I don't want any of that. I was fearful. Actually, I say I was fearful. I do not read summaries. I do not read the backs of books. So I didn't know what this book, other than the cover, I didn't know what I was getting into. And then when I saw a little bit of romance popping up, I thought, I hope this isn't what that's going to be. But it's done so well that it doesn't feel like it's it's not a sappy romance. It is meaningful. It is full of depth. How the journey that we see go through, and I'm not saying whether or not anybody ends up together, but the journey was key in this. So you definitely see risk and romance. And at the very beginning, you see hints that there may have been some type of a very traumatic experience by one of the main characters. Both of the characters have experiences, but one especially heinous trauma. But as you've already mentioned, as you go throughout the story, you have these backstories that, and I'm going to be honest, I missed some of the hinting towards that at the beginning. I don't know how I did, but I did miss it. And then you see what actually happened. Well, somebody was talking about the foreshadowing, and I went back and I read chapter 1. I'm like, well, it's all there. You see that she's going to go through some terrible things, or has been through some terrible things.
Right.
And so you see that, and not only with Kate, but also with Nick, there's some things that he goes through in developing him as a character and some flaws that he has with, I also think, some strengths in his backstory. But there's this conflict between doing right and not doing right, between making wise decisions and making unwise decisions, which is always adds levels and depth to the story. So I really enjoyed that. The world building is basically, it's a post-apocalyptic world. Everything seemed pretty basic there. I did write down in my notes to mention about the freaky laughter, the giggling of the zombies, which to me added a level. It's like adding almost, I hear the giggle of Chucky from Child's Play and mix it with zombies and stories that I've seen in movies. And so when you put that together, that's eerie, especially if you're walking around in the dark and you hear this giggle and you know there's nothing good attached to that. Scenes of one thing that is specifically just talking about the eeriness of this story that Molly did well was children. Anytime you have, whether it's
yes,
a vampire story or a demonic story or a zombie story, when you add children in the mix and you have innocence that's been taken away, innocence that's been perverted in some way, changed, then that really adds a level to the spookiness of the story. So that is what I would say about the plot depth.
Awesome. I wouldn't add anything to what you just said. That's exactly how I saw it as well. Derek, anything you'd add?
The only thing I would say is I was not expecting a lot of this. Just I knew it was a zombie type book, so I kind of had in my head what I thought was going to happen, and it was not that at all. It was so much more. The romantic part of the story, I didn't have any problems with that at all. I liked it. It felt very natural, believable, and very real world to, somebody who had gone through those things. You've got to trust each other. You have to start to trust each other to be able to survive. But I just felt like it was well done, and to me, it was very believable.
Yeah, that backstory that's given to us about Kate, it's like, holy cow. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So what would you give it out of 5, Matt? What's your rating?
I would give it 5 out of 5. That's what kept me reading, was the depth. Had this just been a scary story about zombies eating everybody, it wouldn't have been nearly as enjoyable. It may not be the best word, but captivating as it was. So I give it a 5 out of 5.
Okay. For me, I bring a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, it was pretty impressive how much the author brings into this in a relatively short novel. Those use of flashbacks are fantastic, giving us pieces a bit at a time, to flesh out the characters and the mystery of what's going on. But there was a little more to the world that I really would have liked to be revealed. So that's the only reason 4.5. 4.5 is a freaking great score still, but that's what keeps me from the 5 out of 5. What do you think, Derek?
I guess I would say probably a 5 as well. I think, for me, if I'm going to review something, to me, there's just kind of two spectrums. It's either I loved it or I didn't.
It's a 5 or it's a 1.
Yeah. Just keeping it simple. So I would give it a 5.
Very good. Well, I want to talk specific about the characters now. So let me lead on that. The character work that Molly McCobb has done here. It's really the story of Kate and Nick. Okay, 2 survivors who've been through incredible ordeals, and then an apocalypse comes along. And we get to see them through flashbacks before the apocalypse, and now we get to see who they are and who they're becoming. And they're both incredible, scarred characters that you can't help but cheer for. And honestly, their experiences in the past are part of what make them capable of managing what they're dealing with now. Not that it's easy. You really want to see things work out for these characters. They are empathetic people that you very quickly get drawn into. You're on team Kate and Nick. You want to see this work out. The author does a great job of getting us to engage with these characters, understanding them, watching their journey, and cheering them all along the way. I thought the depth that Molly brings to these characters was incredible in such a short book, and was clearly the strongest aspect of the novel. Now, the rest of the characters, they're pretty much background to tell the story of Nate and Kate. Why don't we just say Nate and Kick now? Okay, Kate and Nick. So there's not a lot being given to the other stories. They fit stereotypes and caricatures to tell a story for the most part. That's my feeling of it. But what she pours into the characters of Kate and Nick are pretty impressive. Derek, anything to add to characters and the character work?
Not really. I mean, I would agree. The main characters are the main characters, and then you've got the stand-ins, behind them. I mean, they all still felt very real to me, but you don't really need as much on these other characters, these secondary characters. They're there for a little while, or maybe not. They're not so much the important ones. And everything that we need that is important, we can get through our 2 main characters.
There you go. Yeah, in the story, as the narrative is being told, the first bad guy, wow, he's instantly all bad guy. she really gets us to hate that guy very quickly. And then where the story goes with it, we're like, okay, yeah, I can work with that. Matt, what would you add to characters?
I agree with what you've said. I feel like the 2 main characters were very well fleshed out. Could there be more? Oh, I mean, it's a very short book, so maybe there could have been more, but I felt like I got what I needed in this particular book. And the back characters, the side characters, they were exactly that. They were not fleshed out. They served the purpose. But I think that's okay in a story like this. They were meant to serve the purpose of putting forward the 2 main characters. And piggybacking off of what Jim said, the biggest monster in this book is not a zombie. So
yeah.
That's kind of what I would say.
And I'll say that's a consistent theme for zombie apocalyptic literature. The worst monsters are never the zombies. It's a way to tell the story of humanity. So for a rating on this one, we'll rank this one again. And I go with a 4.5 out of 5. Again, a very strong score for what she's doing with character work, primarily because of what she's done with Kate and Nick. Just amazing. The other characters, pretty shallow, so that's a limiting factor, but very small limiter. 4.5. Derek, I guess it's a 5 for you then?
It's a 5 for me, yeah. Just, I really liked Kate and Nick. You get to see how flawed they are, and a lot of what caused those flaws to be present in them. You can't help but be sympathetic towards that. And just, there's definitely parts in this book where you're reading it, and again, I never saw things going in the direction that I read. It's not what I expected. And so, I mean, my heart just went out to them like, oh man, like, it's horrible. It's just horrible. Right. And unfortunately, stuff like that probably does happen.
Sadly.
Minus the zombies, but.
So far.
So far.
Matt, What would you add? Your score and your thought?
Right. So again, with everything y'all are saying, I'll mix it up a little bit. If I were just scoring Kate and Nick, I would give it a 5 out of 5 because I felt like exactly what needed to be done with them was done. If I am scoring every character all at once, I would probably give it probably a 4, if not a little less than a 4. Just all the characters together. So you put that together, I'll say 4.5 as well.
There we go.
Just and being consistent, but also I think there's not just going along with what's been said. I feel like there was more that could have been done with other characters, but that wasn't enough to make me think, well, this is just a terrible story, because it wasn't. I was very satisfied with pretty much everything that took place. If I were going to critique anything, there was a particular part of the story where they meet up with other characters. I felt like some of that moved a little fast. Maybe I don't know that people would have reacted in the same way in real life as they acted in the book. But again, the author was trying to get somewhere, and you have to do that sometimes. But still, it was very well done. 4.5.
Perfect. Derek's going to take the lead now on talking about the writing style of the author here. Just a disclaimer on this, as those of you who watch our channel know, I'm not a literary critic. I don't talk with the absolute expertise of what is quality writing. It's what do we like? What's working? What's our gut feel? And really, all of us on this episode are the same way in that regard. So don't expect Derek to give you a master class here. He's going to give you his general thoughts, just like any of us would. Derek, talk about the writing style.
To me, Matt, I know you had said you're a very visual reader, and I'm the same way too. When I'm reading something, I want to be able to have that picture painted for me. And I think a lot of that was done, and maybe some of it I found I didn't want that picture painted in this particular story, but it was, and it was still well done. Everything was described really well. The gore present in the story, I didn't think was overdone, but when it was there, you knew it was there, and it was still very visual, very descriptive, and I like that. Even just, Nick, Kate, they're walking down the streets, and just the description of the landscape, what's around them. I really enjoyed all of that. It felt like what I might see in like the fall or summertime in Minnesota if I'm out for a walk in the park, that type of thing. So everything felt very relative to me, very grounded, and I enjoyed it.
Perfect. Matt, what would you add to that?
Again, I think the writing style was well done. And this is, I think we've probably already mentioned this is a debut novel. I have read some debut novels where there was enjoyable aspects, maybe even a good story, but you could tell it was a debut novel. I don't think, had I not known that I would have picked up on that, because it's a well-written book. There was on, I think it was X, Molly was actually critiquing herself. It made a statement about something she felt like she can grow in her writing on, and that's perfectly fine. But the specific things she said, I didn't see. Someone would have to go point it out to me and say, hey, this is the thing that she was talking about, because I never felt like there was a problem with the writing. So I enjoyed the writing, and I don't know when maybe it's the next thing, but Derek had mentioned something about visualizing something you don't want to see. I feel like Molly did that very well, and I don't want to get ahead of ourselves anyway. I feel like Molly did some things very well with that, in spite of this being things that we don't want to see.
Absolutely.
And that goes to show her writing.
Her style of writing drew you into a story, a narrative, and an understanding of these characters in a way that could make you uncomfortable with the things you're seeing without making you uncomfortable reading it. She's able to do it in a way that's as gritty and dark as necessary, but not overboard. She found that fine line. And again, as her first book, that goes to some natural talent she's got here.
Right. There is no quicker way to get me to DNF a book than writing an essay scene in a way that is supposed to be seductive somehow. I've read some books. I've stopped in the middle of series because there was a strong essay scene, and it almost seemed like, I hate to say wish fulfillment, but it felt like it was moving in that direction. Molly addresses some of those things, but you see the evilness of it.
Yep.
You see the absurdity of it, and you never feel like you're supposed to be entertained by it. You're supposed to be repulsed by it. when I did my review, I wanted people who read the review to understand there's some things in here you're not going to read. And if you don't want to read this, stay away from the book.
Mm-hmm.
But boy, she did it well. That even in the darkest time, she still brought light there. And even being against evil is light. So,
Yes.
so the way she wrote those scenes was just, I appreciated it.
Well said. Yeah. So, Derek, what do you give for a rating of the writing style?
You just stick with a 5. I liked it. Matt, you mentioned, I guess the thought that came to my mind is, given some of the subject matter in this book, I guess I would say it was tastefully done, as much as you can be with something like that. Like you said, shedding light on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so I was really impressed with that. And again, I never even really thought about the fact that this was the debut novel, because you're right. It definitely didn't feel that way. It felt like somebody who's written multiple books. So yeah, it was really good in my mind.
And Matt, your star rating, 5-star, where would you put it?
Not being a writing critic, I would have to say 5 out of 5. I understand there may be things that could be better, but nothing that brought me out of the story. I mean, I've read books before that I could tell this could have been said a lot better, or there's mistakes here. I didn't get that out of this. So no. I have to give as close to a 5 out of 5 as I possibly can. Okay. And I don't feel bad about giving out so many 5 out of 5s.
I'm going to differ again just a teeny bit. I'm really impressed with how Molly takes a story with elements that I'm not necessarily all in for, particularly the relationship parts, the little touch of romance that might be part of this story. That's not my thing, but she got me to care about it anyways, to be invested in what was happening. But even so, there's a little bit of that felt just not quite authentic for me. Just a teeny bit. So 4.5 out of 5 again. Overall, fantastic writing. And again, the way she's handled some really difficult topics so sensitively, but genuinely, it's right there. That's really good. What kind of themes, messages is the author trying to bring to us to this story? Matt, you're taking the lead on that. What jumped out for you?
Yeah, well, I'm sure that every reader can come up with different themes and more themes than what I've written down. I've come up with 5, and I don't know that each of these would even necessarily always be a theme in and of itself, though they were themes that stood out to me. So the first one is survival at all cost, which I assume would be prevalent among all zombie apocalypse stories, because you're going to have survivors. You don't have much of a story without survivors, and so the characters want to survive. Kate wants to survive, but because of past experiences, you need help in surviving, and her accepting help was a struggle, but still we see survival at all costs. We see survival at all costs with Nick. Though he has his background, he would have a better ability to survive. He would have a soldier's mentality. And so you see that coming across things that he adds to the story. The next theme that stood out to me was trust issues, which is just bouncing off of what I've already said. Both of our characters have some trust issues. I would say Kate more than Nick, but she has reasons to have trust issues. She has big reasons to have trust issues. But I loved the journey. She didn't just automatically fall in love with Nick or trust everything. In fact, I think even up towards the end, you still see some resistance, which I thought was very authentic.
Yeah.
So we see trust issues. Trusting other people you come in contact with, not wanting to trust too much, because sometimes trust can be a negative thing if you're putting your trust in the wrong person. And so that comes out. So there's a lot around trust that was here. Number 3 was living and surviving with past trauma. Now, I can't speak to this with as much experience as others can, but I feel like Molly did a good job addressing past trauma. And now this trauma, again, I hope I don't have to read stuff like this very often, but understanding that there are people out there in the real world that struggle with so much trauma, whether it be abuse like Kate was in this story, or whether it be verbal abuse, or whether it be whatever it may be, bringing that into the story is real. You can feel it because so many people have experiences with trauma of all different levels. And so we see that. You also see Nick having certain levels of trauma, though some of that was brought on by himself. You still see him dealing with things. The next one, which I believe will be number 4, is, and I'll say this, I worded it living and surviving with past trauma, because that is another, it's not just about past trauma, it's how to live and survive
Right.
while you have that, which was important. The need for community. And this was my favorite. This is my favorite theme in the book. I love thinking about community. We all need community. We look for different ways to find community. And when you find that in a story, I think of the Fellowship of the Ring. I think of other adventure stories where you always have people coming together. And usually there's somebody who has to overcome not wanting to be in the community. And we see that here. There is a need to be a part of a group of people that helps you survive. I was saying a while ago that you need people to help you survive. You're usually not, lone wolves don't do well for long. So you need people in your life. And I think we see that on a smaller level with Kate and Nick. They needed the community of one another. But we also see that they're trying to get back to a greater community of what they used to experience, or of what society used to experience. So they're wanting to get back to that because we need one another to survive. And then, and this particularly is centered on the character of Nick, the theme of self-forgiveness. I've done things wrong. I've treated people in a way that I maybe shouldn't. And maybe I thought I had reasons to do that, but still I've blocked people out of my life. I've burned bridges. I don't deserve love because I've done this. You have to forgive yourself. You have to come to grips with, we have to move on. And though we can't change the past, we have to still emotionally survive to get through this. And so those are the things that stuck out to me: survival at all costs, trust issues, living and surviving with past trauma, the need for community, and self-forgiveness.
Yeah, Matt, those are some great themes. Nothing comes to mind that I would interpose on there, but I want to really highlight how much I appreciate the juxtaposition between two of your themes there: the trust issues and the need for community. I mean, that's a real tension point in this story that Molly handles really well. How that interacts. Yeah, good stuff. Derek, would you add anything to themes? Is anything missing there?
No, I don't think so, Matt. I really liked the self-forgiveness because it's not something I really thought on. But as I reflect back on it now, I can totally see that. Your other four, I guess, like for me, I would summarize it in one word, and I would just say perseverance is what I took away from this story.
That's good.
You know, like you said, doing what you have to survive and just build out from there.
Beautiful. All right, we don't rate themes. Themes are very subjective, and it's how you feel about it. So we don't score this one. I'm gonna move on to talk about warnings, and we don't rate this either. But this is stuff to be aware of if you haven't read this book yet and you're considering it. There are elements of the book that you may not be comfortable with, and some readers will want to avoid because of your own personal past or things that just don't work for you. I mean, first of all, it's a post-apocalyptic horror novel, okay? So the usual triggers that come with something like that are there: violence, brutal attacks, death, some gore. But over and above, I mean, we've got some serious triggers to warn you of. There's sexual violence, there's rape, there's mental and physical abuse, there's PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. I think I got that right. Characters having suicidal thoughts. Is it even worth it? Should I just end it all? I mean, those are elements of the story. If any of that is something that is going to make you very uncomfortable because of your personal past experiences, you're going to want to avoid this story. But at the same time, I think what the author does speaking to these things is powerful. So you kind of make a judgment call as to whether or not it would be for you. Am I missing anything, guys? Derek, anything trigger or warning worthy that you would add?
The only other thing I would add is, I mean, you mentioned violence, but there is instances of violence against children a time or two in this book as well. So, I mean, if you're fine with violence, but maybe that might push you over the limit.
Don't mess with the kids. Yeah, that might. You're right. Matt?
The only thing I would add, and this is a trigger for some, not a trigger for most. It's not personally a trigger for me, but I still think it would be worth mentioning, is there is a lot of adult language in this book, which is fine. Again, that doesn't bother me, but it does bother some readers. And some people would be turned off by maybe the amounts of a certain particular four-letter word. It's there. And also I would mention, and I don't remember you saying if you were going to mention this or not, but going along with this particular topic, at the end, she does give suicide hotline,
Mm-hmm.
as well as National Sexual Assault Hotline to help with anybody who would have struggles and they may need someone to talk to, which was I would say was an appreciated thing.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning that for sure. And for highlighting the language. I'm like you in that sense that it doesn't bother me when I'm reading it in a story, but some might be. I never use language like that. I just can't. These words can't come out of my mouth. My son laughs at me about that. I tell you, I am, and this is long embedded into me, minor tangent here. Back in college, I minored in theater. Okay. And one of the courses there, I had to get up in front of my class and deliver a monologue. And in this monologue, I'm a grittier kind of guy, and I have to say the F word very convincingly. Yeah, I got bad marks from the professor. I couldn't do it. I mean, I said it, but it was the most unbelievable word you'd ever hear coming out of my mouth, apparently. I just can't. And I'm okay with that. Let's talk about then our final wrap on the story. What do we give as an overall rating? And who might we recommend it for? What kind of recommendation we make for the story? Derek, give us your thoughts there first.
Oh, well, I would give it 5 stars.
No. Serious?
Like I said, I'm
that
a
makes sense.
simple guy. I'm either gonna like it or I'm not. So, and I really did enjoy this. One of the things that I did like, and you could kind of see it, Matt, when you put the book up just a moment ago, but she also had a soundtrack in the book, which I thought was cool. A lot of those bands, I know a lot of them. I've seen a good chunk of them perform live. So, if you like heavy metal music, that type of thing, you might want to check out this book. If you like zombie books, check it out. Jim, it sounds like it's different from maybe not every single one that you've read, but it's different enough from them. For me, it was a good palate cleanser to read something like this from all the just fantasy type stuff that I've been reading lately. So it was good to step into something different. So if you just need something grounded a little bit more in our world with a sci-fi twist to it, I would say it's a great book to check out. I liked the chapters. There was a lot of them, but they were kind of, I guess I would call it bite-sized chapters. They're very easy to consume.
Keeps moving. Yeah.
Yes, just kept me moving through the book and therefore made it very hard to put the book down. So I read this book. For me, I read it very fast. It was probably 2.5 weeks.
I get completely what you're saying, but I can't help but chuckling, picturing this book as a palate cleanser. But I know what you mean. That's great. It's a definite shift from the other types of things you read.
Yes.
Matt, what would you say? Your rating and thoughts?
That was exactly what I thought when he said palate cleanser, which is fine. It's fine. But in my mind, I said, well, I would probably say a good change in pace for me. But I can see someone looking at it as a palate cleanser. So I don't rate everything I read 5 stars. I haven't read a lot of what I would consider 1-star books. Read a couple, but not many. So 1 star. And I know you're not looking for an outline, but for me, 1 star is I hated the book. It was terrible. There's nothing redeemable about it. 2 star, it was just a bad book. Maybe not as bad as it could have been, but it just wasn't good. 3, it was good. I enjoyed it. 4, I enjoyed it so much. I would recommend it to maybe not anybody, but I would recommend it to a lot of people. Read pretty much anything this author wrote. 5, one of my favorite books of all time. I don't think I would say it's one of my favorite books of all time. But there is a select group that go into that. Though there are many things I would rate this 5 out of 5 on, I would still rate it a high 4. So 4.8, if I could say that, if I could have the liberty to go into that high. But I really loved this book. I think Molly shows a lot of promise. I would definitely read whatever the next book she writes. I enjoyed it a lot, and maybe one day, maybe the longer it sits with me, maybe it'll make that jump into one of my favorite books of all time. But regardless, if I say if it's a favorite book of all time, I'll say this. It's my favorite indie book I've read this year. And I feel like I've read 5 so far, and all have been good. But this is my favorite so far that I've read this year. And I'll try to continue that throughout the year to give my top indie reads of the year. I enjoyed it. So 4.8.
Nice. On Goodreads, I gave this a 5 out of 5 rating. It doesn't let you do any decimals on Goodreads. I
did too.
So I wanted people to see a positive review. I want people to take notice and check out this book. But with the use of decimals, this shouldn't shock you. I give it a 4.5 out of 5. I really enjoyed the novel, even more than I expected it to, because some of the elements with romance that were going to be in there, doesn't always hit for me. It's not the perfect novel, but for this style of book, it's pretty darn close. It tells a great post-apocalyptic horror story while packing emotional depth into it. So I'd recommend it to any fans of this subgenre, so long as you can handle the triggers. But most people who are familiar with the subgenre are familiar with those kinds of elements. Yeah, it's a solidly good story. I want to give it praise for sure. So there we go. There's our review of Dark Bloom. And, watching it, viewers here, you probably get the vibe. We're suggesting you might want to check this book out if you haven't yet. If you have already read it, tell us your thoughts. Put them down in the comments. Always love to see what you're thinking about the books you're reading. I'll be sure to respond, and be sure also to look in the show notes again for how you can check out Derek, how you can find Matt's channel and see the stuff that they're putting out there. If not a Malazan reader, Derek's channel does have other books. So see what other kinds of things you're going to be finding there, but you should become a Malazan reader. I know it's a series a lot of people DNF, but it's just because they give up too soon. Persistence, just like Derek says, one of the themes should be persistence here. It applies to Malazan as well. Great book. Enjoyed talking about it with both of you gentlemen. Derek, you got any last thoughts you want to share with the viewers?
I did see on Twitter the other day that Molly I think she finished her first draft for Dark Bloom 2.
Yes.
And so she's going through revisions, whatever that process looks like. I don't know because I'm not an author, but it sounds like it's progressing. So that's exciting. And I guess I don't think I saw any sort of projected date that she had where she would anticipate this being out, but it's moving in the right direction. In less than a year, it's barely been 6 months since this came out. So she's moving quick.
Yeah, when we get her on an episode with us, we could try to corner her on that one. Say, okay, so when, and see what she says. Nicely corner her. Matt, last thoughts?
No, it was a great book. And I also saw on X here a while back where Molly was able to give a signed book to one of her favorite musicians. I think maybe one of the ones who she highlighted in the back. She went to a concert and she happened to be able to give him a copy of the book. So congratulations to her for that, to be able to meet a hero like that. And anyway, no, I enjoyed the book and I thank you so much for letting me be a part of this. It's been a joy.
This has been a blast. Yeah, thanks for your time. Thanks for collaborating with me on this. And viewers, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you next time.